Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Brian and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
That's me.
Yep. Last week, last week you heard me and Miss Berlin talking to Omer about Kubernetes security. So that was quite interesting. And this week we have Mr. Betcher, and Miss Berlin is, what did she say? She was driving or something. So she's not going to join us this week. She's getting ready to do stuff and hang out with family, so we're gonna let her have that. So how you been this week, Mr. Betcher?
It's same old rough week, and then weekend working at the house, getting stuff together, and then soccer dad with the kids. So just busy.
Okay, so
So that's a good thing.
Yeah,
at least it's not boring.
Yeah, exactly. So before we get started, just going to mention InfoSec Campout. We're going to do a conference here in the Seattle area, August 23rd through the 25th. So if you're interested and you want to do some camping here in the Pacific Northwest, there are tickets that will be available coming up shortly. We are trying to do a call for papers, so we're looking for 3 or 4 speakers to speak at our conference. So you'll be able to come and possibly camp if you wanted to. The conference is only a 1-day conference, but if you're interested, you can reach out to us on our BrakeSec Twitter, or you can email bds.podcast@gmail.com, and we'll get you some instructions on how to submit your CFP. So Mr. Betcher wants to do it, but unfortunately it's a bit of a drive for him.
Yeah, it'll take a couple days to get there.
Yeah, you could just fly,
Yeah.
That's okay. You're not a flyer so much. So, all right. So let's see. Things I learned this week. So, for those of you who've been following over the last few weeks, I've been doing a lot more IC at my office, individual contributor, and one of those things was attempting to do pen test of a customer environment, and I was learning things that I don't normally do or have ever done before, and one of those was dumping credentials on a device without using Mimikatz or Meterpreter. In this case, it is possible.
Yes, it is.
Well, okay. So here, one question I've got. You didn't have system. Me and Mr. Betcher were chatting back and forth before the show, and you said you weren't able to dump those without system privs.
Correct.
Now
these are the ones in the registry, SAM security and system.
Yeah. Those were the ones that I was able to dump, but without system privs. So.
I don't know how you did it.
I don't know either. Maybe I didn't do it right, and it just said, "Yeah, you're good to go." Because I didn't get a hey, you're not allowed to or anything like that. So let me see the SAM security and system hives in Windows. The SAM hive is the one that controls or has a security accounts manager. And it holds all the users' passwords. Why they would stick those inside of a registry, I don't know, but they are cryptographically, they are hashed, and they are, they takes a while to crack once you've dumped them. So, sorry, got new headphones, so I'm having to deal with the new sounds in my head here. So, once you dump those should be one of the first things you do once you've gained, system or what have you to the environment. So, it was an interesting engagement. We've finished with the engagement, so we're writing up the report now. But there was a lot of different ways that we were able to get on the system. We were using $$ for admin shares. One of the things was we had to do a phishing exercise, and we found a user, one of the user creds that got fished, because we were actually able to successfully fish someone, was able. He had local admin to a lot of boxes on his environment. So once we did a who am I /group for the user that was logged in, we found all these additional groups that he was involved with, and then it was just a matter of escalating privileges on the box. So we used PSExec, which was on the network. We found it in a network share on the network, so we were able to escalate the system at that point. That may have been, now that I think about it, that may have been after, when I started dumping creds on the box. So that may have been the case when I had system. So,
right. Yeah, you can't get that with admin. There's a lot of stuff you can't do with administrator. You would think you could do anything, but
yeah,
not so much.
Yeah, so we're still cracking on the passwords, but we're not sure. We're not sure we're going to get anything. The last thing that I remember.
Hashcat?
Yeah, I think we're using Hashcat. Oh my God, I had such a hell of a time with that. So I have a Debian box right over here to my right in my lab, quote unquote, and it was running Debian, and I had all the OpenCL drivers and everything in, and trying to get CUDA to work with the GPU that I've got, because I looked at the spec sheet and my graphics card supports CUDA supposedly. Later I found out that it doesn't actually support CUDA, because Hashcat doesn't use CUDA, it uses OpenCL, which is an entirely different system. Found that out from Chicken Man. Hey, Chicken Man, thanks for the advice. Thanks for the help. He reached out from Austin. He's one of the people on the Hashcat team. So big props and help to him. I did a lot of work before I asked the question, but yeah, my Quattro K620, which is about 5 years old, supports CUDA, but just not the right kind. So I have to go get a GTX 1050 for $130 or something if I want to crack real accounts. Otherwise, I have to use CPU emulation, and it's quite a bit slower. So, yeah, well, quite a bit slower. I'm saying, well, I was using Hashcat and John, the Ripper Jumbo, and each CPU was still cracking about 10,000 hashes per second, so times 12, so it was 120,000 hashes per second, thereabouts. So it wasn't awful, especially when I was cracking SHA-1s. So, I was busy cracking passwords on my own system, and I could hear the fan shooting up. So, very interesting, fun. I get it now. I didn't do a lot of pen testing in my career. So, being individual contributor on this engagement and doing the pen testing and the red teaming from a network perspective, you teach it. I've done 504, and they're like, oh, here's the commands, everything. Doing it under a deadline with people just, hoping for you to gain access to whatever it is you need to gain access to, it was kind of thrilling. I definitely got the thrill of the hunt, if you will. So, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Working under pressure is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and watching that enter button and waiting for oh, you've dumped the creds, and you're like, yes, I was able to do that. You definitely get the thrill of accomplishment in that case. So, yeah. The only downside is now I have to write the report. So I'm doing the boring shit this week. So, writing the report, how we got in. Screenshots, lots of screenshots. So, some of my testers aren't a fan of screenshots, but I don't think you can take enough in my opinion. So, all right. So, oh yeah, one of the other things we used was something called Power Manager, I think was called, and the idea there was that it would attempt to modify the LSAS, which is a process in Microsoft Windows, to enforce security policy on the system. But the other thing is that if people have logged into those boxes that you're remoting to, and they're using them, then you could pull the memory or pull the passwords out of memory, similar to like how Mimikatz works, where you can pull them out of memory. We use something called Power Manager. It was in Python, and yep. So there was some restrictions on the systems. We had issues installing software And even things like Python, you couldn't use the MSI or the EXE, so I had to find the embeddable zip file so that we could run Python that way. So there's some nice and interesting restrictions in place on the system that allowed us to that we had to figure out and think creatively to get around. So that was fun. So
there's there is a Python, I guess, zip file that allows you to run Python where Python's not installed?
Yeah. Let me go find it.
So it's like a container almost, right? I've seen this where malware is written in Java, and then they have to upload the Java virtual machine self-contained environment in order to run their malware.
Yeah. They call it's new with version 3.5. It's called the embeddable package. So if you go to python.org, they have the embedded distribution as a zip file containing a minimal Python environment. It's intended to act as part of another application rather than being directly accessed by end users. So it says when it's extracted, it's almost fully isolated from the user's system, including environment variables, system registry settings, and installed packages. Standard library is included as a precompiled and optimized PyC file in a zip. So Python DLL, Python 3.dll, Python 3.7.dll, Python.exe, and Python.w.exe are all provided. So it's not, let me see, it says Tickle and TK, all dependents such as idle, pip, and the Python documentation are not included. So this is like a very basic Python environment. And when we would try to install anything, we didn't have administrator rights on those boxes, but when you had your minimal Python environment, you were still able to run Python commands and unzip other system or other programs like Power Manager or whatever to be able to make changes to make checks on the environment. So that was something I learned about as well. You don't have to install a full Python environment. This is a nice small little version in Python 3.
Yeah.
Okay. So some of the other things, Kerberoasting, we tried some of that and it didn't work so well. That's where you use Kerberos ticket granting system tickets to be able to make changes to the environment. You can request service tickets and return crackable ticket hashes. That's right. This is something you might be interested in, Mr. Betcher. So detection. So if somebody's trying to Kerberos, if you're setting up a logging environment, so there's a checkbox or something called Audit Kerberos Service Ticket Operations. And if you're looking for specific event IDs like 4769, type 17, especially if they're asking for RC4 encryption, I assume RC4 encryption because it's more easily crackable than whatever the default is. So if they're asking
Definitely.
if they're asking for Kerberos tickets with type 17 as one of the errors, then you know that it's or as one of the logs, then you know that somebody may be trying to do Kerberosting on your network. So it's always a good thing to be looking for or logging for when you're in an environment where it might be hostile. So,
right, as long as you're doing local logging and sending that up to a SIM, or if you can't, at least you do the local logging. And if you need to launch an investigation, it's there for you.
Well, okay, here's a question. So let's say I'm a bad guy. What if the first thing I did was turn off logging? Would there be a log event that went to your SIM that said, oh, this host has turned off logging?
You can set that up, sure. When someone deletes logs, that is a log event as well.
Okay.
So you can never actually delete that log event.
Right.
Right, because it happens after the log deletion. So that's a big one. If anyone deletes logs, you should know about it right away.
Are you getting that there was a log turnover? Does it say, oh, this log was recently cleared, or what kind of error you get there?
It was a log clear.
Okay.
Or it will be a log clear.
Right.
So in a normal, that's abnormal, right? No one does that because in Windows they by default roll. Right?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So a stealthier technique would be to create tons of log entries. That way, whatever you do is going to roll in no time.
Right.
However, if the target is doing offline logging, they're going to get it no matter how many times you delete it or roll.
Right.
right? So I know that more sophisticated attackers will figure out what kind of logging is going on the box, and that gives them an idea of what they can do. If local logging isn't set at all, then they can do stuff in this article, dumping creds and all that.
Right.
But if it is, then that's a problem. You can't do any of this. You can't run Mimikatz. You can't do any Kerber roasting as long as they're doing proper log management. That will be detected.
That's interesting. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So this was some of the stuff I was looking at was from the MITRE website. Where's that? So they said mitigations against Kerber roasting or TGTs or TGSs is ensure strong password length, ideally 25 characters, and complexity for service accounts, and that these passwords periodically expire. Using a group managed service account or other third parties such as password vaulting. Limit service accounts to minimal required privileges. That's very important, including membership and privileged users such as domain admin. And limit Kerberos encryption to AES rather than RC4 where possible. So I guess the default is RC4. I wonder why they haven't deprecated that or made it where it wasn't a thing. So
I don't know.
Yeah.
Be something to research. Is it just Windows 7? Do you have to upgrade to 10, or if you have a fully patched Windows 7, does it get rid of RC4?
I don't know.
And go to something more advanced.
I do know that Windows 7 is outside of no more security updates are happening for Windows 7 after the first I want to say October or November this time. So yeah,
2019.
Yeah, this year, I think. Yeah, unless you're going to pay a lot of money to have it fixed. So let me see. I'm trying to find out if there's a way to know what encryption is being used in Windows 7. I assume RC4 is like the default for everybody, but you'd want to keep it RC4 if you're using a mixed environment, because there may be some chances that if you upgraded to AES, then it might lock you out of certain operating systems from being used. So... okay. So, I mean, those are some of the things I learned this week. I've got some more stuff I'm gonna learn. This has kind of spurred me on to get my lab back up and running. I was gonna sell that server, but now that I know what's wrong with my password that password hacking rig, then I can go get a decent graphics card and try doing proper password hashing, cracks and what have you. So, all right, let's see. Oh, did you read about the Docker Hub security breach?
No. So
this harkens back to our earlier talks for NPM and all those where we have supply chain issues. So attackers breached Docker Hub and they were able to grab keys and tokens. This is from HelpNet Security. So this was announced on April 29th. They said Docker product company popular for a virtualization tool bearing the same name suffered a security breach. They say on or about the 25th, they discovered an unauthorized access to a hub database storing a subset of non-financial user data. During a brief period of unauthorized access to the Docker Hub database, sensitive data from 190,000 accounts may have been exposed, which is, according to this, less than 5% of their Docker Hub users. So usernames, hashed passwords, GitHub, and Bitbucket tokens for Docker auto builds. So they're saying you should change your passwords, revolve your tokens. And somebody by the name of Ken White on Twitter said that it's actually worse than they're making it out to be, because Docker, you need GitHub integration for a lot of things when you're doing your continuous integration. So they said, even if your company doesn't rely on Docker Hub for production, If a developer in your organization enables auto builds and linked to GitHub via OAuth for a personal project, that OAuth token is compromised and all GitHub repos that they have access to are vulnerable. Even the private ones, because he actually modified it accordingly. He said, what started out as a Docker issue is now a GitHub issue. Even if your org doesn't use Docker, if one of your developers used Docker with GitHub integration, your private repos were potentially exposed. It's amazing how everything gets, complicated and connected together for DevOps. All this integration is not necessarily a good thing in some cases.
Right. It kind of leaves you exposed in places you didn't realize.
Right. And anything using OAuth, I guess, would be vulnerable to this kind of attack. So, So if you've been using Docker Hub or you have your developers using it, one, don't just be pulling, Docker. We actually found out that Docker is not really moderated much. So you can install, nasty, Debian builds or something with some, back doors in it, and people just install that stuff. They don't really look or, pay attention. They just do what's necessarily easy, and that, gives people additional access to systems. So, if you happen to find
But it's inherently secure because it's contained.
Is it?
It's in the name.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, not necessarily. I mean, it sounds nice, but they don't call it Docker Sandbox. They call it Docker Container Hub or Docker Hub. So, let me see. Yeah, that one was a little rough. So, let me see. Is there anything else that we wanted to talk about? Did you have any kind of malware or anything this week? Anything you've been seeing from the IR side?
Nothing I can talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, have you guys just made it so easy to find malware and detect malware now that it's no longer exciting, or has there just not been anything of note or anything new?
Every once in a while, we'll get one that is supposed to do like rootkits and things. A lot of the stuff we get is a dropper, and we try to get the stuff that the dropper drops, right? Because people say, "Hey, I got this cool malware," but it ends up being something that installs malware. So usually they're divided into several phases, and certain threat groups specialize in getting access to the system and being able to install malware. And then they hand it off to another group who then specializes in malware, which maintains command and control, that sort of thing. And then they'll hand it off to another group, which further exploits the systems sort of in a manual fashion. That's kind of how the elite hackers or groups or nation states work. So a lot of times when we get what do you call IOCs, it's typically the dropper, and then we'll try to go out and find the malware that gets dropped, and a lot of times that's gone. It's either a one-time use or it's been taken down by service providers, things like that. So if Amazon finds out about some malware that was hosted on their infrastructure and it's reported, they'll look at it and then usually take it down pretty quick.
Right. Okay.
So it's rare that we get really good ones. A lot of times it's sort of the commodity stuff. So yep, that's our story. And then sometimes we get stuff that's new and exciting, but then we can't talk about it publicly because then somebody will find out, what happened here, right?
Right. Yeah. Nope. That makes sense. So, wow. Yeah. I guess that's that's important to know that disclosure can often be your own worst enemy. So. All right. So I remembered one other thing that we wanted to talk about, and it kind of dovetails from the Docker Hub breach. So there's a hacker out there wiping GitHub repos and asking for ransom, but he's not exactly destroying the data that's on there. So according to ZDNet, Catalin Campanu, May 3rd, he posted this story. He said hundreds of developers have had Git source repos wiped and replaced with a ransom demand. Attack started earlier today, being May 3rd. Appeared to be coordinated across Git hosting services, and it's still unclear why they're happening. So somebody removes all their source code and recent commits, leaves a ransom note behind asking for 0.1 Bitcoin, which at the time was about $600 US. And so yeah, they said there's hundreds of victims, 392 repos have been ransomed so far, and they say some users who fell for victim accounts to this hacker were using weak passwords and no 2FA. Others lost or forgot to remove access tokens for old apps they hadn't used for months. So then again, look, we've got supply chain issues, we've got integration issues. So if you're not removing access tokens for old apps that you've got, they say both of which are very common ways in which online accounts get compromised. And so they say all evidence.
Can you explain that? Access tokens, old access tokens. What is that?
Well, for like GitHub, if you are doing various things with your GitHub, like I don't know if you're using AWS integrations, or you're using something that grants an API access token for an old app, it will. It's used, and if it's there long enough, or it's been leaked by something else, in this case, then, those are old, and if you're not using them anymore, they need to go, because, that's important, because they get compromised that way. So
and the weak passwords, what do they just hammer the system? Do they use password spraying? I mean, how does this, I wonder?
My guess is, they're using some kind of password spraying, or they're just constantly trying to log in. So that would be, some of them. I think they mentioned they weren't using 2FA either. So there's a whole big mess of, fail on this case. Where some of the things like I said, you need to do is put 2FA on your GitHub account, or have, what do they call that? They have password values that you can use in case you've forgotten your passwords or what have you. Break glass kind of items, but always enable 2-factor on your GitHub. Look over your company or your personal integrations to your GitHubs and your, any Docker kind of things. So if somebody was using Docker Hub integrations, that might have caused some further, issues there. So, so those are all good things to look at. When you're going in tomorrow, Monday morning, you might want to put that on your to-do list, or have IT look over, what you're using in your CI environment to, integrate with GitHub or what have you. So maybe time to get rid of some old integrations. So, all right, man, I want to talk about Avengers Endgame and Game of Thrones, but I can't do it. It's no spoiler podcast here. So, go see Endgame if you haven't, because it's fairly decent. So
one more thing, on the Kerberoasting, it says portions of the Kerberos tickets may be encrypted with the RC4 algorithm. Mm-hmm. So there's some follow-up to do. We need to figure out why and what we can do to mitigate that.
Yeah.
So, Anyway.
Okay.
That's why it's the Kerberos tickets. So let's fix those tickets.
That's right. Enable AES, because it's harder to crack. It doesn't make it any,
like thousands of times harder.
Yeah. Yeah, but you should be seeing those things across the wire in your logs with the proper event IDs if you're doing it correctly. Like we said, 4796 or something like that. Where was that? It said DNet. I don't know. Attack minor matrix.
Was it 4796?
Yeah, I think it was 4796 that I said. So there's a ton of programs out there though that will dump your data. The ones I mentioned was Power Manager. There's Mimikatz. You can actually just dump SAM if you've like I said, they got systems. So if you can get psexec on the system, and it was a psexec.exe /-s space cmd, and it gives you a command prompt with NT system, NT authority system. So once you get that, you're good to go, I think. So yeah. All right, let me see. I don't really have much. It's going to be a short show this week, in which I'm not overly unpleased about. So, well, we had a long one last week. We have a lot of long shows. So, I learned some more things, but I need to talk about. We'll talk about them as we go along, because I would love to talk about some more of the pen testing stuff that I did while we were on there. So I have to figure out what I can and can't say. So, one thing I will say as a caveat, make sure all your passwords have admin passwords on them. Or all your printers have admin passwords on them, because you don't want to be having an environment where people can just attempt to pivot through a printer. So that's all I'm going to say. So, Mr. Betcher, you've got a lot going on right now. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
What I'm doing
with LogMD and those things.
Yes, LogMD. Mm-hmm. We just added a remote. This is for the pro version, a remote access report.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is an attack or that you think happened,
mm-hmm.
you can run LogMD on whatever systems, and you can see the communication.
Right.
Whether it be to command and control, through RDP, anything like that.
Are you using?
And so it'd be in a nice tight report where you can see if anyone communicated with anything using default things. What kind
of commands are you using there? Are you using like PowerShell commands? Are you using regular Windows commands? What are you looking at?
For creating this report, we're just looking at the logs.
Oh, okay. So you're just pulling the the logs remotely.
We are pulling the remote access logs.
Okay.
On the local machines.
Oh, very cool. Okay. All right.
And splitting them up into various reports so you can quickly look at them. If you want to look at auto runs, you look there at
mm-hmm.
the auto run report.
Right.
If you want to look at PowerShell, there's a PowerShell report. Right.
Right on. This tool's LogMD. So tell us how people would find out more information about that.
Yeah, you can go to the website, log-md.com.
Cool.
To find out tons more.
Okay. And if people wanted to follow you on Twitter, how would you do that?
My Twitter account is @BetcherPwned, BOETTCHERPWNED.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So just as an aside, I know some of you are unhappy about not getting tickets to DerbyCon. I apologize for that. I managed to get a ticket. I'm going to be there for training. I'm going to take the Python for OS hacking, which looks like a very good class. It's a 2-day class, I think. So I'm going to be in there on the 3rd of September, flying in and staying until the 9th, the following Monday, because I don't want to try to fly out on Sundays like I did before. But everybody from BrakeSec and the BDIR podcast is going to be there. Michael Goff, he got tickets. Mr. Betcher got a ticket through Mr. Goff. Ms. Berlin's got her black badge she earned last year for the mental health village and the stuff she's doing for that. And I've got my training tickets. Everybody's going to be there. It's going to be great for the last DerbyCon. So you and I have to actually plan out, what hotel we're going to be staying at and stuff. So
right.
Yeah. Single bed like last time?
Yes.
Excellent. Twin bed. Big spoon. Anyway, all right. So, Miss Berlin.
I want my own pillow this time, though.
What? Wow, you're asking a lot. It's asking a lot. So Ms. Berlin's doing the Mental Health Hacker Village. I think she's at Hackers Health on Twitter, but you can also find her at InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR. Hackers Health, I think is what it's called. Hackers Health. Yes, Hackers Health on Twitter. And if you're doing a conference and you're interested in maybe having her come and do the Hackers Health Village or the Mental Health Village, hit her up. Ask her to come out. Her or Ms. Roddy will come and do it for you. So, if they're available. So, all right. So, podcast. You can follow the podcast on Twitter, BrakeSec, BRAKESEC, and you can follow me on Twitter at BrianBrake, BRYANBRAKE. InfoSec Campout. I'm really starting to ramp that up, which it's in August, and we. For those of you who live in the Seattle area, we just rented the barn that's at the campsite so that we can have talks that are under the shade, and we're doing it a little differently. So most conferences have talks that happen all day from, say, 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. But because of the timing and everything, we're actually starting talks at 3 in the afternoon and going until 8. So by then it will be heat of the day going on into evening. And we're going to have 6 or 7 talks, but during the day from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, we're going to have various workshops. So we're looking for some workshops. We're looking for, something maybe 3-4 hours long. And if you're interested in doing something, please let us know. We're looking for all kinds of talks as well. So we have a disaster recovery talk, which I thought was quite interesting. That we don't have a lot of disaster recovery talks. A lot of them are just not disaster recovery, but incident response or digital forensics or log and SIM. But this is going to be talking about what happens if, let's say, you lose all communications. So we're going to be talking about satellite communications and that. We have a handshake agreement with somebody to do that for us. We are looking for sponsors, so if you're interested in doing sponsors, you can go to bds.podcast and at gmail.com and talk to us about sponsoring us. We have different tiers, different levels. If you're interested, we'll send you a Google Doc with the current levels that we have as is. So. We have a Slack. The BrakeSec Slack is going gangbusters. We're trying to get the CTF club started over again. It started last night. Unfortunately, we had some logistics issues, so nobody showed up. But we're trying to get back into that. Pinkie Pie is going to have talks. We're going to be talking about various methods of attacking a system, kind of like what we just talked about today with dumping credentials and hashes using Mimikatz. Doing privilege escalation. He's planning on working out speakers who would come and talk about how you would do various things like, Linux privilege escalation or, very simple hour-long talks on how to do binaries or something. If you're interested in talking about, pen test or red team and type environment, please let us know. The idea would be you maybe talk about privilege escalation on a Linux box, and then we would go into a vulnerable VM that would teach that concept. So just something to think about. Thank you to our patrons. We just got another patron the other day. Let me go and pull up my email. I'll find his email or name. So it was Brandon. So Brandon's one of our new patrons. Thank you for being a patron of the podcast. You're helping out with hosting and our Zoom here and our communications and just the time and effort needed to get the podcast out. So we appreciate your support, sir. All right. That was it, I think, for breaking down security. Mr. Betcher, any last words?
No last words.
Awesome. Okay. Well, all right. Have a great week, everybody. Take care of yourselves because you're the only you have, and we will talk to you again soon.
Bye-bye.